To most of the world, Daniel Carter was someone to admire, a celebrated architect, a genius of green design, a widowed father raising two boys on his own, while somehow still managing to land multi-million-dollar projects and charm architectural panels in his standing ovations. His name had become a kind of brand, one that suggested clean lines, timeless beauty, and effortless composure. But at home, inside the quiet two-story house, tucked away in a sleepy Oregon suburb, there was no applause, no spotlight, just a man with tired eyes and mismatched socks trying not to burn the oatmeal again. The real Daniel wasn't in the glossy spreads of design magazines. He was the man who rocked his youngest, Micah, through nights of stubborn fevers and midnight nosebleeds. He was the man who sat on cold bathroom tiles, holding a flashlight under a blanket fort, because Leo, his eldest, couldn't sleep without a light shield against monsters. He was the one who pulled all-nighters, not for blueprints, but for fourth-grade science projects and missing teddy bear hunts. And when the house finally fell silent around 2 a.m., Daniel would often find himself slumped against the kitchen counter, eating instant noodles straight from the pot, too tired to care about plating or presentation. It wasn't glamorous, it wasn't celebrated, but it was his life, and somehow he kept showing up for it, day after day. No one wrote headlines about that Daniel, the one with dark circles under his eyes and a laundry basket permanently parked in the hallway. The one who hadn't had a full 8 hours of sleep in years. The one who sometimes cried quietly in the garage just to get it out before breakfast. People at galas only saw the man in the tailored charcoal suits. The one who gave eloquent speeches about the intersection of nature and structure. They didn't see him stepping on Legos barefoot at 6 a.m. or racing to school drop-off in sweatpants with toothpaste still on his sleeve. And as much as he loved his sons, and he did more than anything, there were moments Daniel wondered if he'd lost the version of himself that existed before grief and responsibility took over. Or maybe, he thought, this was the real version all along. The messy, exhausted, deeply human one. Some nights, while the boys slept and the hum of the baby monitor filled the silence, Daniel would sit by the window with a mug of cold coffee and wonder, if I wasn't Daniel Carter, if no one knew my name, my work, my story, would anyone choose me anyway? It wasn't a desperate question, just a quiet one, a thought that lingered like a half-drawn sketch in the back of his mind. And it was that thought, soft, persistent, and deeply rooted, that made him do something unexpected on a rainy Thursday evening. He downloaded a dating app. No profile photo, no job title, just a simple bio. Single dad. Loves architecture, coffee, and bad dad jokes. Looking for something real. He promised himself it didn't mean anything. Just curiosity. Just a distraction. He didn't know that one small act, one anonymous profile, was the first brick in something entirely unexpected. Something that might just rebuild everything he thought he'd lost. Saturday came with gray skies and a chill that hinted at rain, the kind of day that made coffee taste better and everything else feel a little heavier. Daniel stood at the sink, rinsing cereal bowls while Leo and Micah chased each other around the dining table, both still in their pajamas and full of noise. The boys were his joy, but joy didn't cancel out exhaustion. Micah was mid-scream when Daniel finally clapped his hands and called out, "All right, Team Carter, let's get out of the house before we tear it down." The plan was simple. Take them out for pizza, maybe let them run off some energy. But as he stood in front of his closet, Daniel found himself ignoring the tailored shirts and reaching instead for a faded gray hoodie and jeans that hadn't seen an iron in weeks. He looked normal. Not like Daniel Carter, architect of the year, but just a dad who had 5 minutes to get 2 kids dressed and out the door. He grabbed the keys to his old Subaru, dented on one side from a bike mishap, smelling faintly of crayons and stale fries. The boys piled in, Leo instantly claiming the back left seat like always. and Micah clutching a juice box like it was sacred. Traffic was slow, windshield wipers dragged back and forth, rhythmic and tired. The inside of the car was chaos, Micah yelling that Leo drank his juice box, Leo swearing he didn't, Daniel reaching back blindly to mediate with one hand while the other stayed on the wheel. No one looking at them at that red light would guess who Daniel really was. No one would think he'd spent the past week sketching the plans for an eco-smart housing complex set to change an entire city district. No one would care, and strangely, that felt like a relief. He glanced at the rearview mirror and caught Leo staring out the window, lips tight, deep in whatever 10-year-olds think about. Micah had moved on from juice to demanding pepperoni on his half of the pizza only. Daniel smiled to himself. This mess, this noise, this perfectly ordinary Saturday was real. And maybe, just maybe, if the world could see this version of him, someone else might too. That thought stayed with him as they pulled into the parking lot of a small, cozy pizzeria on the corner of 5th and Maple, where something unexpected was about to happen. The pizzeria was small, warm, and smelled like melted cheese and garlic butter. Exactly the kind of place where no one asked for autographs or business cards. Daniel held the door open as Micah burst through like a rocket, already announcing his hunger to the entire restaurant. Leo trailed behind, clutching a sketch pad and pretending to be indifferent, though his eyes flicked eagerly toward the open booths. A young hostess barely looked up before motioning them toward a corner table near the window. Worn but quiet. Perfect. "All right, Team Carter," Daniel said, using his mock-serious dad voice as they settled in. "Mission rules, no yelling, no fighting, and whoever behaves gets dessert." "Chocolate pudding?" Micah asked, eyes wide. "If you earn it," Daniel said, hiding a smile. He was halfway through scanning the kids' menu when the bell above the door jingled again. A woman walked in, brushing damp curls from her cheek. She wore a denim jacket, soft floral dress, and a slight frown as she scanned the tables. One hand clutched a canvas tote, the other hovered above her phone like she was double-checking something. Then, her eyes landed on Daniel's table. She hesitated just for a moment, and then walked straight toward them. Daniel looked up, puzzled, as she stopped at the edge of their booth and gave a sheepish smile. "Hi, sorry I'm late," she said softly, sliding into the seat across from him before he could say a word. He blinked. Micah blinked. Leo blinked. There was an awkward beat of silence before Micah leaned forward with zero hesitation. "Are you the macaroni lady?" Lena stared. "I'm the what?" "You're late," Leo added, arms folded like a miniature lawyer. Daniel finally found his voice. "Ignore them. They're dramatic. Long story about macaroni." He should have told her she had the wrong table, that he wasn't whoever she was supposed to meet. But he didn't. There was something about her. Something real. Her laugh wasn't polished. Her eyes weren't calculating. She looked tired. Not from makeup or work, but the kind of tired you carry after too many first dates that feel like job interviews. He knew that look. He'd seen it in the mirror. And when she laughed, really laughed at Micah's dramatic retelling of the great macaroni incident, Daniel felt something inside him shift. They ordered pizza, half with pineapple because Micah insisted, half without because Leo refused. Lena didn't flinch when Micah dropped a breadstick on the floor. She just picked it up, handed him a new one, and whispered, "Heroes don't quit over breadsticks." Micah beamed. Leo cracked a smile. Daniel watched the way she looked at them, not with politeness, but with warmth, with ease. Like none of this scared her, like she belonged. And even though she thought he was someone else, some Brian from a dating app, Daniel didn't correct her, not yet. Because for the first time in a long, long while, someone was sitting across from him, not for his name, not for his buildings, not for his reputation, just being there, just being her, and for now that was enough. The next morning, sunlight slipped through Lena Brooks' apartment window. Thin and pale, she sat cross-legged on her bed, a mug of tea forgotten on the nightstand, her phone buzzing quietly in her hand. A new message blinked across the screen. Brian, dating app. I waited 20 minutes. Not cool. Attached below was a selfie, a man in a starched shirt and skinny tie. Clearly not the man she'd had pizza with last night. Her breath caught. The text blurred. Oh no, she hadn't gone on a date with Brian. She had sat down at the wrong table. And whoever that man had been, the one with soft eyes and a hoodie that smelled like cinnamon and soap, he hadn't corrected her. He had let her stay, had let it happen. She covered her face with both hands, groaning. Her roommate Tess leaned into the doorway, toothbrush in hand. So, how was it? Lena peeked out between her fingers. I don't think I ever went on that date. What? I sat down at the wrong table. You what? Tess started laughing mid-chew. Wait. So Mr. Adorable Dad and his two mini chaos monsters were just strangers? Lena nodded slowly. Not random. I mean, he felt like someone I've known forever. Tess grinned. Girl, that's not a date fail. That's a romantic comedy setup. But Lena wasn't smiling. Not really. She was thinking about that man's laugh, the way he'd watched his boys with quiet tenderness, and how she'd felt seen, not assessed, not judged, just noticed. And somewhere across town, in a sleek, high-rise office framed by skyline views, Daniel Carter sat at his desk, pretending to read a client proposal while his mind played back every second of last night. Maya, his longtime assistant, stepped in quietly and placed a tablet beside him. You're not going to tell her, are you? Daniel sighed, fingers pressing into his temple. I meant to. She still thinks you're… What? Brian the accountant? I guess. Daniel? He hesitated, then said softly, she looked happy. I didn't want to break that. Maya crossed her arms. Then fix it. Properly. Daniel looked down at the crayon drawing Micah had made of Lena with a superhero cape. He smiled faintly, then stood up. Find out which school she works at. The air outside the elementary school was sharp with early autumn wind. Daniel stood just beyond the front entrance, clutching the crayon drawing Micah had made. 4 stick figures holding hands, one clearly meant to be her. He hadn't rehearsed what to say. He just knew he had to be here. Then he saw her. Lena stepped out with her canvas tote slung over her shoulder, jacket tugged tight around her. The moment her eyes landed on him, she froze. She took a few cautious steps forward, stopping just a breath away. Her voice was cool, too calm to be natural. You lied to me. Daniel met her gaze. I didn't mean to. But you did. Her jaw clenched. You sat there and let me ramble on about first dates, thinking I was meeting someone else. You knew. You knew the second I sat down. I did, he admitted, voice low. But you smiled, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like someone's profile or paycheck. I just felt seen. Well, that's not an excuse, Lena snapped, her voice rising. You let me embarrass myself. You played along. Daniel's brows tightened. And you didn't question why I wasn't the man you were supposed to meet? Her silence was sharp. She looked away, lips tightening. I didn't, she finally admitted, eyes dropping, because for the first time in a long time, I was actually enjoying myself. Daniel stepped closer, softer now. So was I. But it wasn't real, she bit back. I thought I was getting to know someone honest. A single dad trying his best, not… She laughed dryly. Daniel Carter, the man who designs cities. I am that dad, he said, firmer now. I'm the guy with a broken porch light, a fridge full of apple juice, and 2 kids who think garlic bread is a food group. But you're also someone who hides behind half-truths, she said, staring straight at him. How can I trust anything you said last night? He held out the crumpled drawing. Micah drew this morning. He already thinks you're part of our family. Lena took it hesitantly, eyes scanning the childish lines. Her anger softened, but didn't disappear. Why me, Daniel? She asked, quieter now. Out of all the people you meet, the polished women in cocktail dresses, why me? Because you looked at me like I was human, not a brand, not a story, just a man with two loud kids and a sweater that smelled like pizza sauce. Lena let out a shaky breath. This is messy. I know, he said, but it's also real. A long pause, then she spoke, voice lower. If I agree to see you again, it has to be all of you. No versions, no edits. Daniel nodded. You'll get all of me. The chaos, the crumbs, the late-night microwave pasta. Everything. Her eyes flicked to his, uncertain but softening. Then don't screw it up. That weekend, Lena didn't dress up. She wore sneakers, brought a pack of pudding cups, and knocked on the door of a worn-out house with peeling paint. Micah tackled her in a hug. Leo grumbled about rules. And Daniel smiled like he hadn't in years. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And maybe that was enough. For a brief moment, things felt possible, fragile but real. Lena had started coming over again, quietly after school. She brought leftover banana muffins, listened to Micah's long stories about pirate ships, and helped Leo paint a cardboard solar system for a school project. Daniel kept his promises, no secrets, no masks, just him, the dad in a hoodie who sometimes burnt dinner and read bedtime stories twice because Micah begged. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. And for the first time in years, Daniel let himself believe he was allowed to have this, until the photo changed everything. No one knew who took it. Maybe a neighbor, maybe someone passing by. One shot, barely focused. Lena on Daniel's porch, laughing, one hand resting on Micah's head while Leo grinned beside her. The next morning, it was everywhere. Daniel Carter's secret romance, mystery woman at family home. By noon, tabloids had dug into Lena's name, job, salary, apartment history. Bloggers twisted her into a cliché. The small-town school teacher chasing a big name. Trolls took it further. Obvious gold digger. Look at her dress, straight from the clearance rack. Daniel Carter's standards? Gone. What's next? A Netflix doc? Lena stared at the screen, numb. Tess stood behind her, white-knuckled, reading the comments over her shoulder. They have your school, your classroom photo. Someone called you an opportunist with crayons. What does that even mean? Lena didn't speak. She just kept scrolling. One post had screenshotted a joke tweet she made 2 years ago about ramen and unpaid rent. Another dissected her social media like it held the secrets to world domination. She laughed. One bitter, breathless sound. I sat at the wrong table, she whispered. No, Tess snapped. You sat at the right one? The world just doesn't deserve you. Meanwhile, in a glass conference room overlooking the city, Daniel stood frozen in front of a screen flashing with hashtags and media coverage. He didn't blink, just stared. Maya, his assistant, leaned in. They've traced everything. Her students' parents are asking for reassurance. Some online creep posted her old home address. Daniel walked out without a word. 15 minutes later, he stood at Lena's door, sweatshirt damp from rain, hair a mess. She opened it only halfway. You promised me quiet, she said, voice breaking. You promised me peace. I never meant for this. I know, she cut in, but it doesn't matter. This isn't your fault, Daniel, and it isn't mine either, but I'm the one paying for it. He stepped forward. Let me fix it. Her eyes filled. You can't undo this. He didn't try to argue. Then I'll disappear if that's what you need. But please don't think the boys are part of the circus. They miss you. Lena swallowed hard, fingers trembling on the door frame. Keep them out of this. Keep them safe. That's all I ask." Daniel nodded slowly. "I promise." The door closed with a soft thud, but it felt like the world had gone silent. 3 days passed like a shadow. Lena turned off her phone, stayed home from school, ignored the outside world. She reread the same paragraph in the same book over and over and never turned the page. Across town, the Carter house had lost its rhythm. No board games, no music, no laughter. Micah asked fewer questions. Leo didn't correct his spelling. Daniel did his best to hold it all together, but he knew something had fractured. One gray morning, while Daniel was rinsing dishes in silence, he noticed Micah standing by the big living room window, struggling with a roll of clear tape. "What are you doing, buddy?" Daniel asked gently. Micah didn't answer, just pressed a crumpled sheet of paper to the glass with both hands and smoothed it carefully. When Daniel came closer, his breath caught. It was a drawing, a stick figure version of their family. Him, Leo, Micah, and Lena, with her curly hair and polka dot dress. In messy, colorful letters above them, Micah had written, "We miss you, Miss Lena." Daniel crouched beside his son, one hand resting on his back. "You think she'll see it?" Micah whispered. Daniel stared at the drawing for a long moment. "I hope so," he said quietly. Because in that moment, no architecture award, no polished reputation, no silence could fill the space she'd left behind. And nothing had ever felt more real than that tiny sign on a foggy window. It was the fourth morning since the silence began. The weather had shifted. The air was warmer, but inside Lena's apartment, everything still felt cold. She sat curled on the edge of the sofa, a mug of untouched tea in her hands, staring through the sheer curtains at nothing. The apartment was too quiet. No students, no laughter, no noise, just memory. She thought about Micah's giggle when he mispronounced Tyrannosaurus, about Leo's serious little nods when she praised his art projects, about Daniel, his eyes when he was just him, not a name in headlines. A soft knock interrupted the stillness. She didn't move at first. Then again, 2 quick raps, followed by one loud one, a rhythm that felt oddly familiar. She stood slowly, approached the door and cracked it open. And there they were, Micah in his superhero cape, red, wrinkled, and slightly too long, grinning up at her with hopeful eyes. Leo standing slightly behind, trying to look nonchalant but holding something behind his back. And then Daniel, no designer coat, no press aura, just a hoodie, a tired face, and a look she recognized instantly. Vulnerability, raw and unguarded. Micah was the first to speak. "I didn't bring pancakes," he blurted, "but we brought us. Can you still come out and play?" Lena blinked. Her hand tightened on the doorknob. Daniel didn't move forward. He didn't speak until she looked at him. "I'm not here to fix everything," he said, voice low. "Not here to give speeches or beg for a second chance with some grand gesture." She didn't interrupt. Just let him talk. "I'm here because we miss you," he said. "Because I miss who I am when you're around. Because the boys are quieter without you. And I hate that silence." Leo stepped forward then, revealing what he'd been hiding, a small plastic container, inside of which was a smushed chocolate pudding cup and a folded paper napkin with a doodled smiley face. Micah whispered, "You said heroes don't quit, so we're still here." Lena laughed softly, the kind of laugh that breaks mid-sound and turns into something close to a sob. She crouched and wrapped both boys in a hug, so tight it knocked Micah's cape sideways. "You guys," she whispered, "I missed you so much." When she looked up at Daniel, her eyes were glassy but warm. "I don't know if I'm strong enough for your world," she said honestly. "It's not about my world anymore," Daniel replied. "It's about the one we're building. Here now." A pause. Then Lena stepped aside, opening the door wider. "No pancakes today," she said, voice trembling, "but I can burn a mean grilled cheese." That afternoon, the four of them sat cross-legged in Lena's tiny living room, playing Uno on a coffee table scratched from years of use. Micah cheated like a pro. Leo argued about the rules. Daniel sat back, arms crossed behind his head, just watching, taking it in. At one point, Micah climbed into Lena's lap mid-game and fell asleep there, fingers still wrapped around a blue draw 4 card. Leo rolled his eyes but leaned against her shoulder. And Daniel, he didn't say much, just watched them. Soaked in the simple beauty of a moment no camera could ever capture. Later that night, after the boys were tucked into a pile of pillows and old blankets, Lena stood beside Daniel near the kitchen sink, wiping the last dish. She didn't say anything right away. Then quietly, This won't ever be simple, will it?" Daniel shook his head, a soft smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "No, but it's ours." Lena looked at him, really looked, and then she nodded. "Good," she whispered, "because I don't want perfect. I just want real." Daniel leaned down and kissed her, gentle, grounded, steady. No fireworks, no spotlight, just a man and a woman trying again, this time without fear. And in the other room, 2 boys slept soundly, safe, loved, and whole again. There was no big announcement, no viral post, no soft launch of their relationship. They simply stopped hiding. Lena began spending weekends at Daniel's house, slipping in with bags of crayons and lesson plans, falling asleep on the couch after helping Micah with finger painting or grading Leo's spelling test. She didn't try to be anything other than herself, and that was exactly what the boys needed, what Daniel needed too. The media circus, like all storms, eventually moved on. A new scandal, a different celebrity. The spotlight that had once felt suffocating shifted elsewhere, leaving behind a quiet they had all prayed for. Lena went back to teaching full-time, this time with a little more confidence in her step and a new drawing from Micah pinned to her classroom wall. A stick figure of her holding hands with Mr. D and Leo and me. Every afternoon, just before 4 p.m., Daniel's beat-up Subaru would pull up beneath the big maple tree outside the school. Leo in the back seat with homework, Micah waving a dinosaur out the window. Lena would smile every time she saw them, like it was the first time all over again. They didn't need to say much. Some days they'd eat dinner on the back porch, passing plates of overcooked pasta and laughing when Daniel burned the garlic bread again. Other nights were quieter, movie marathons, blanket forts, falling asleep in a tangle of limbs on the living room rug. It was messy. It was real. It was home. One crisp October afternoon, Daniel surprised them with a picnic in the backyard. A red checkered blanket, cookies Micah had smuggled from the kitchen, and a handful of wildflowers Leo had picked from behind the fence. As they sat under the fading light, Daniel reached into his coat pocket. Lena's heart skipped a beat. He didn't kneel. He didn't rehearse a speech. He just took her hand and held out a small ring. Simple, silver, quietly beautiful. Before she could answer, Micah launched himself forward with a squeal. "Say yes. I want to call you Mom." Leo, standing beside her, didn't say a word, but gave a tiny, serious nod that said everything. Lena laughed, choked and beautiful, and whispered, "Yes." In that moment, beneath the October sun and surrounded by laughter, something quiet but monumental shifted between them. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were choosing, deliberately, bravely, and with open hearts. And so, a few weeks later, they married on a quiet afternoon by the Oregon coast. No grand stage, no flower arch glittering under chandeliers. Just the wind in their hair, waves licking the shoreline, and a scattering of people who mattered most. Lena walked barefoot in the sand, her white dress brushing her ankles, curls tumbling freely in the breeze. Micah insisted on being the ring security, holding the tiny velvet box with the seriousness of a soldier, while Leo pretended not to tear up when Daniel called Lena his home. It was small, simple, beautiful, and for them, it was perfect. No headlines followed the next day, no photographers hiding in the dunes. Just two people, arms wrapped around each other, dancing slowly under a sky that turned gold and lavender as evening came. The boys ran barefoot down the sand, their laughter the only soundtrack. There were no fancy menus, just grilled cheese sandwiches, cut diagonally because that's how Max liked them, and a lemon cake test baked slightly lopsided. They didn't toast with champagne, but with root beer and mismatched mason jars. They built a life quietly after that. And 3 years later, they welcomed Ellie Carter into the world. She arrived at dawn, a determined little thing with wild curls and lungs that could shake the walls. Lena sobbed the moment she held her, overcome by a love so fierce it startled her. Daniel kissed her damp forehead and whispered, "We're doing it. Again." His voice cracked on the last word. They brought Ellie home wrapped in a blanket too big for her, greeted by two overexcited brothers who immediately began arguing over who got to hold her first. Leo said he was more responsible. Micah said he was faster. Lena just laughed, already exhausted, already full. Life didn't slow down after that. It just got louder and better. Their mornings became orchestrated chaos. Cereal spilled, shoes went missing, someone always forgot their lunchbox. Micah practiced his spelling on the fridge with magnetic letters. Leo declared math was an ancient curse, and Ellie refused to eat anything unless it came from Lena's plate. Daniel would burn the toast every other morning, but somehow that became a tradition no one wanted to break. "Why does it smell like fire?" Lena would joke. "Culinary excellence," Daniel would answer, holding up the charred slice proudly. Lena worked half days at the elementary school now, teaching art in colorful smocks Ellie loved to steal. Daniel adjusted his workload too. Less travel, fewer panels, more evenings spent on the floor building pillow forts and reading bedtime stories about dragons and rocket ships. They had no live-in help, no house manager, no perfectly curated living room for social media, but they had each other. And that was enough. Every night after the kids had finally fallen asleep, Lena and Daniel would collapse onto the couch, her legs draped across his fingers absently tracing circles on her ankle. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they just sat in silence, the kind that didn't feel empty anymore. And in those quiet moments, Daniel often looked around the room, at the half-folded laundry, the drawings taped to the wall, the broken Lego piece under the coffee table, and felt something click into place. He had spent years building homes made of steel and glass, places praised for their precision and beauty. But none of them ever felt like this, because happiness, he now understood, wasn't built the way he used to think. It wasn't in polished floors or custom lighting or magazine covers. It was in Lena's sleepy smile when she leaned on his shoulder, in Ellie's squeaky footsteps as she raced through the hallway, wearing Leo's oversized hoodie, in Micah's hand slipping into his during a thunderstorm, in the burnt toast, the messy mornings, the laughter that echoed louder than any silence ever had. Daniel watched them all, his wife, his children, his ordinary, beautiful life. And finally, he understood. Happiness wasn't something you earned or bought. It was made from moments that looked like nothing to the world, but meant everything to you. Happiness wasn't something you earned or bought. It was made from moments that looked like nothing to the world, but meant everything to you. And sometimes all it takes is sitting at the wrong table on the right day.